Hello, good evening, and welcome back. So, second wave of COVID strikes Europe, which is largely predictable. That is what we would expect to happen, seeing as they have decided to invest so much into more testing procedures, and of course, the test being largely unreliable. That is to say, they're unsure of which coronavirus, or even if it is a coronavirus, is being detected, and therefore, well, have they actually got it? And are the results actually a better proportional rate of how many people have it on a wider scale, or are they just inflated from the figures that we had previously? Either way, from their judgment, there is a so-called second wave, which is to say you had a spike and then a trough and now a spike again, or at least it's climbing up. And we can see how various European countries are compared here up until August 5th from the European CDC. So as we see the peaks that we all know, that the UK is of course coming up here, as we see Spain was most affected but it's coming down again, just like Belgium, and the other countries like France, Ireland, Germany and Italy are slowly increasing. And then of course at the bottom, predictably, we see Sweden, which seems to be doing okay. If you're saying that it is actually increasing up and they're also facing a second wave, seeing as their lockdown measures have been largely non-existent and unaltered, then perhaps it is down to more testing instead of more people being infected. Or, if you prefer then, seeing as it's still in the negatives, maybe it's not really much of a concern and that it's still decreasing, but if you're having so few people who had it, then you'll get to a point where you can't really decrease by such a big percentage, in which case that's actually a good thing that you're seeing the decrease percentage drop until eventually, of course, it just spikes at negative 100% as the last person doesn't have it anymore. But that is what we're seeing, and this is the bi-weekly change, so it's over the last 14 days relative to the number in the previous 14 days. So almost as if Sweden was right, and yes, of course, there was a hoo-ha at the beginning of July, around about here, but since then, they seem to have been doing quite well. But they don't want to mention that in the full article, because of course they don't. Instead, they go on to say, the head of Germany's doctors' union has said that the country is already in the midst of its second wave because people have flouted social distancing rules, which seems a bit odd on the back of what we've just said about Sweden. France says it stands on precipice and could at any moment tip out of control. Oh no, their localized lockdowns are going to go national. 2 towns north of Madrid, Spain, have been put under strict lockdown. Greece recorded 121 new cases Tuesday, the highest daily tally since April 22nd, and Italy has quarantined 2 infected cruise ships at Civitavecchia port in Rome. Close one there. Which I really do look forward to, in terms of the results that we get out of those 2 infected cruise ships, because we will know everybody on there, we will know that level of interaction, because it's very confined, and we will be able to compare and contrast that to the Diamond Princess, which showed that even with an elderly population, the death rate was remarkably low single digits. And of course, deaths on cruise ships are not uncommon. They have a procedure that they follow very regularly because of that. Some say that they are just floating coffins, essentially, and this would be another example of that. But nonetheless, I will keep my eyes peeled for information as it comes out for the quarantined cruise ships, because they will be the best case studies in knowing what happens when you know everybody there, and of course they can't leave the situation and nobody else can come in, because that is the effective quarantine. But as they go on to say, a second wave of COVID-19 has struck Europe, forcing Spain to reimpose lockdowns and cases spiking to a 3-month high in Greece. The head of Germany's doctors' union has declared that the country is already in the midst of its second wave because people have flouted social distancing rules, and France's top scientific committee has warned the virus could at any moment tip into a scenario that is less under control. Which seems to suggest that, from what they're going, to give them the greatest benefit of the doubt, the lockdown measures work, and only lockdown measures work. Nothing else works. You've got to have a really, really strict lockdown order in order to prevent people from dying. And unfortunately, the evidence really doesn't back it up. But sure, yeah. Even going with their favourite cherry-picked evidence of saying that the lockdown is a necessity for saving people's lives from coronavirus, as I said many times previously on this channel, that you have then got to contrast this with other areas, the unforeseen circumstances. When you get any experts in their field advising government on what to do, that's fantastic and they should be taken into account. But they shouldn't ride precedence over other experts in their own individual fields. That if you have somebody who's the virologist saying, oh, well, this virus is going to be deadly, we've got to shut people in so that they can't be infected. I said, okay, cool. And now we're going to go to the economist side of it and say, so what effect is this going to have for people's well-being and livelihoods and therefore their ability to live based on the economic impact? It's going to be absolutely dreadful. Okay, cool. And now we're going to go to somebody who's more of an oncologist specializing in cancer. So what effect are these lockdown orders going to have on people who have cancer and about getting screening and getting treatment before it becomes terminal? It's like, oh, this is going to be terrible and we're going to see a rise in cancer deaths. So, oh, okay, cool. So obviously you'd have various different experts in various different fields, and then you balance out all the evidence. You go, okay, cool. Well, it seems we understand the risk that the virologist is saying about COVID-19. We understand that it's a very bad thing. However, we have to go with the lesser of the evils. We have to go with the least bad thing. And unfortunately for you, virologist, although we hear you, we understand you, and we agree with you that is the best thing to do from a COVID perspective, it is not the best thing to do for the individuals involved. And therefore, I'm afraid we cannot continue with a national lockdown. It's just not feasible. And that would be a very straightforward, matter-of-fact way. And if you want, you can have a whole press briefing as well, where each expert would have their allotted minutes of time in order to put forward their best case, in which case the public can then, of course, hear the best arguments from every side as well, and then weigh it up as they see fit. And then the closing statement would be pre-prepared by the government at the time, who understand this knowledge ahead of time, and say, given what we've seen here, weighing it all up, this is the decision that we've made. Therefore, everybody is fully informed of why that decision has been made, and whether or not they wish to support it or not, based on their own values. And the way that the democracy works is that you elect a party that is closest to your values, so that you don't have to think about every little thing that goes into the running of the entire nation. And that is how it should work. But they don't seem to want it to work that way. But there we go. If you're getting pushback from a particular thing, like, of course, we've got racialized police shootings or COVID-19 lockdown measures, then what you should do is say, well, we're going to make as much information as possible accessible to as many people and publicize it far and wide, because we strongly believe we're in the right, and therefore we want to make sure we express everybody's arguments as strongly as possible, because we've got nothing to fear. And in fact, maybe by doing that, we'll find out we were wrong and say, well, thank you for bringing it to our attention. This is why we've changed our minds, and now this is where we're going to go for it. And hopefully you're going to agree with us, given that you're going to see every argument displayed. That would be the most sensible, straightforward way to do it. As I say, you can just make your points more concise for whichever argument you wish to convey from your specialty, and not overlapping, but literally just from your specialty, and then putting it forward for a few minutes. And you can go over, let's say, 10 different departments for 5 minutes each. You got an opening statement of 5 minutes and a closing of 5 minutes from the government, and therefore everybody knows where they stand, and it just takes a regular hour slot, and that's case closed pretty much. If then things change and you want to do it again a week later or 2 weeks later, then by all means do that as new evidence comes to light. But just make sure people stay in their lane of knowing what they're talking about and what the effects of the proposed legislation would be. And I know it's not foolproof, but at least then people have a better understanding of why decisions were made and what they wish to agree on. But instead, we're just seeing a lot of fear instead to try and say, oh, it's all on the rise and everything's terrible and nobody should be able to meet anybody or go outside at all. But that's where we are now. So the point of this video is hopefully to just calm you down and say things may not be so bad as they seem. The biggest threat seems to be from the government instead of the virus. And not just the Chinese government either. So, in closing, thank you very much to Thoriva for mentioning the channel here with the disagreements that we may have. But I hope that my daily videos will continue in the so-called semi-regular upload schedule. But anyway, thanks again, and thank you to all who do continue to check out the channel. Do like and subscribe, and also hit that bell notification if you wish to get subscribed of new videos, because I have noticed from using various YouTube accounts that often my videos won't be seen, and also the comments that I post won't be available for anybody other than me to see at all. So there's definitely some shadow banning going on, which I kind of wear as a badge of pride, knowing that despite my very small size and channel, I'm big enough for the YouTube algorithm to take note and wish to pull me down. So thank you to everybody who has found me despite that and continues to support me. It's very, very much appreciated. But that's it for now. So as always, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, have a good one.